Good morning, everyone, especially to our professor, Ma'am Nerissa Beatriz, and to you all, my classmates. I am Charmaine Liborella from Ocampo. My topic for today is all about the techniques in guidance and counseling. So let's define first what is guidance. Guidance is the help given by one person to another in making choices and adjustments and in solving problems. Guidance also aims at aiding the recipient to grow in independence and ability to be responsible for one's own self. Another one, it is a service that is universal, not confined to the school or the family. It is found in all sectors of life, in the home, in business, and industry. It also found in government, in social life, in hospitals, and in prisons. It is present wherever there are people who need help and who provide help. Then, let's define the word counseling. What is counseling? Counseling is a specialized service of guidance and basically an enabling process designed to help an individual come to terms with his life and grow to greater maturity through learning to take responsibility and to make decisions for herself. Counseling is helping relationship. This includes someone is asking for help and someone is willing to give help who are capable or the trained people to help in a setting that permits helps to be given and received. So, what are the techniques of guidance and counseling? The techniques which are generally employed by guidance workers for collecting basic data about a person are either the non-standardized techniques and the standardized techniques. Both these categories of techniques are used in getting the primary data. All these techniques are useful. The only consideration which the guidance worker should keep in mind here is that these techniques employed or the techniques employed should give reliable and objective information. For the non-standardized techniques, first, are commonly employed for individual analysis by counselors in various settings. And the second one is techniques provide a broader, varying, and more subjective approach to data gathering and interpretation for human assessments. Let's discuss the first non-standardized techniques, which is the questionnaire. A questionnaire is a list of questions to be answered by an individual or a group of individuals, especially to get facts or information. Questions are designed to get information about conditions and practices about which the respondents are presumed to have the knowledge. So the question must be elaborated to match with the other techniques. There are two questions in a questionnaire. The first one is the open type question, and the second one is the closed type questions. Open type question. Questions require the individual to think and write. So, for example, what is your favorite sport? So the open type question is time consuming and it requires more techniques of guidance, special skill in interpreting the data. While the closed one, it the closed type questions requires the answer in the form of yes or no or in a limited number of given categories. So these closed type questionnaires can be easily scored, interpreted, and more objective. So example, how often do you watch Discovery Channel? What gender are you? Another non-standardized techniques is the observation. So what is the observation? In this technique, behavior is studied through observation by a trained observer. The effectiveness of the technique depends on the skillfulness of the observer. The observer is expected to observe well-defined behaviors free from biases and prejudices. These observational techniques are useful in the study of students and individuals, but their usefulness depends on some manner and purpose on what they are conducting. Sociometry. The purpose of this technique is to study the nature of social relationship of individual within a group. It offers an opportunity to identify personality problems, especially in isolates and the rejected. Isolates students are remain alone with no relationship in the class, while the rejected students are disliked by other students. The three types of sociometric techniques. Number one, denomination. Denomination techniques, the student is asked to select and name his or her peers in terms of some criterion. Example, the teacher may ask students to name three best friends in the class. Number two, the social acceptance. The social acceptance are the levels of social relationship are stated, and the student is asked to express his or her sociometric choice. And number three, the who's who or the guess who technique. It is a brief description of various types of students are provided, and they are asked to guess who in the class matches with the description. Example, one of the statements may be, the boy is always in trouble with his parents. Who? Number four is the autobiography. You might have read autobiographies of great personalities. In a guidance technique for studying this individual, it gives valuable information about the individual's interests, abilities, personal history, hopes, ambitions, likes, and dislikes. An autobiography is a description of an individual in his or her own words. In guidance, structured autobiographic items are given to the individual, and he or she is asked to write them out. Next technique is the rating scales. So what is the rating scales? So in rating scales, a selected list of words, phrases, sentences, paragraphs, following which an observer records a value or rating based on some objective scale of values. In this technique, the presence or absence or a behavior or the trait in person is rated in terms of quantity and the quality. So you might be rating your students' performance, about their handwriting, their habits, and many other aspects in your day-to-day teaching. So, for example, Jade has done better than Sheena in mathematics, but Sheena scored the highest in English. Ram is taller than Sheena, but Sheena is taller than Jade. So in a rating scheme, each student is judged on the same general traits, and judgments are expressed in the form of a scale on which are marked very poor, poor, average, good, and very good, or very good. In a rating scale, the characteristics are rated according to given number of points. So the points are in terms of grades or numbers. So, for example, meeting strangers may present a serious problem to one individual and no problem at all to another. Between these extremes, or two extremes, the seriousness of the problem may differ from one individual to another. The ratings may be qualitative or quantitative. So, for example, seriousness of the problem may be rated as below. So, based from the table. There are types of rating scales. The first one is descriptive. The second one is graphic. The third one is forced choice. The fourth one is the paired comparison. And the last one is the rank order. In the descriptive rating scale, these are used to assess a personality trait or an attitude or behavior of a person. The following example of a descriptive rating scale is to assess the behavior of an individual. In the first column, you have a number of phrases describing varying degrees of helpfulness arranged in order, which may be descending or ascending. So this could be always, usually, or occasionally. This above example of rating scale for systematic appraisal of real-life behavior. The observer selects the phrase that applies or comes closer to describing the trait answer under the consideration. Then, the graphic rating scale. What is graphic rating scale? In a graphic rating scale, an attempt is made to characterize degrees of a trait by the brief description. The line showing the presence of a trait in an individual is divided into three, 5, or 7 points. So then, an example of graphic rating scale is given below, which measures the persistence of effort. The teacher places a mark at a point which describes the trait possessed. A check mark may be placed in between this if necessary. For the choice method, forced choice rating scale forces the rater to choose between the two alternatives, such as true or false. These two alternatives appear to be similar. Nevertheless, only one statement reflects the presence or absence of the trait. The rater is forced to make a choice. A number of such statements are given, and the rater has to choose only one of the two from each pair. So when the rater chooses A or B, his or her exact opinion is sought. The paired comparison rating scale uses a points of reference, certain typical students known by those being rated, and then they compare, or the comparison is made. And the last one is the rank order method. In this method, a group of students are ranked according to a certain trait by as many teachers separately as who teaches them. Then, an average rank is obtained from each student. Another non-standardized technique is the anecdotal record. An anecdotal record contains short descriptive accounts about some events regarding a student. Every, every account is a report of a significant episode in the life of student. It is also a simple statement of an incident deemed by the observer to be significant with respect to a given student. This also compared to a snapshot of an isolated incident of the behavior of the student, which suggests some special significance. So, just as camera catches the pose of an individual at a given time. So, similarly, the anecdote should report exactly what the behavior have you observed in that certain time. So, such word snapshots written by as many teachers, especially as in the depth ed, as they meet individual students in as many situations as possible. So give a true picture of the student's behavior pattern or his or her own personality. Every teacher in the school should be provided with forms to write down the incidents about students as when they occur. A few basic considerations to be kept in mind are given below. Number one, the form should be short and informal. Number two, reports should be of some significant episodes. The episode described should show a marked tendency from the norm of the individual or the group. Number three, the anecdote should be written about all students and not just about the high achiever or the problematic ones. Example given, stereotypes. So number four, the anecdote should be the reports of the actual observations and written just after the event. So dito sulat mo agad yung observation mo. And number five, a single incident is of no value. Number six, both positive and negative incidents of behavior should be noted down. So, pwede mo naman isulat yung mga negative and positive na behavior niya. Number seven, we should know what to look for, where to look for, and how are we going to record it. Another non-standardized technique is case study. This defined as a collection of all available information for social, physiological, biographical, environmental, vocational that promises to help explain a single individual. A case study is a comprehensive collection of information gathered using different tools and techniques of data collection. It is the most important technique and the best method of studying the whole individual. So the purpose is to say positively and with confidence that as far as possible, all of the sources of information you have gathered had been tapped, and these kinds of data have been gathered about the client. So, in case study, information about the individuals is organized and combined into whole that the individual studied is viewed as a dynamic, trying to adjust to the environment in which he or she belongs. So the main object behind the case study is to observe the individual as a whole. There are facts to be collected in a case study. A case study about a person presents basic information on the following topics: the physical, socio-economic, and cultural environment, includes the neighborhood in which the individual has grown up and now lives, and the history and present status of the family. The study of the individual is to be made in a similar way as done under family history. And for the personal history of the individual, it talks about on the individual's physical health. Cumulative record. The cumulative record has been defined as a method of recording, filing, and using information essential for the guidance of students. It is a record of information concerned with the appraisal of an individual student. The information which is obtained periodically through various sources, techniques, tests, interviews, observations, case study, and the like is assembled in a summary form on a cumulative record card so that may be used when the student needs advice for the solution of some educational or vocational problem. These are the important information that we need to be recorded: personnel, the home, test scores, school attendance, health, and the miscellaneous. Last non-standardized technique is the interviews. Interviews, a conversation with a purpose. The purpose for which interviews are arranged are introductory, fact-finding, evaluative, informative, and therapeutic in nature. Another characteristic is the relationship between the interviewer and the interviewee. So the occasion should be used for a friendly, informational talk. Friendly lang, hindi masyadong nakaka-stress. The interviewee should be allowed to talk in a permissive atmosphere with confidence and freedom. The different types of interviews are classified on the basis of purpose. Number one, unemployment interview. The purpose behind such an interview is to assess the fitness of person for the job. The interviewer talks too much rather than the interviewee is little. He simply answers the questions. In a fact-finding interview, the purpose of a fact-finding is verification of facts and data collected from the sources. In the diagnostic interview, is remediation. An effort is made by the interviewer to diagnose the problem of the interviewee and to find out symptoms. The necessary information is to collect to help the interviewee in solving the problems. Number four, counseling interview. The purpose of counseling interview is to provide an insight, a suggestion, or a piece of advice to the interviewee. For number five, groups versus individual interviews. When several persons are interviewed in a group, such an interview is known as group interview. But basically, all group interviews are individual interviews because it is not the group that is interviewing. The purpose of this group is collecting information and knowledge of common problems facing of the group. While the individual interview, the emphasis lies on the problems faced by the individual. Number six, authoritarian versus non-authoritarian type. In the authoritarian types of interview, the client and his or her problems are submerged in the interviewer. The interviewee may still regard the interviewer as a man of authority, but the interviewer does not act as authoritarian. She must accept the feelings of the client and does not reject them. She uses the variety of techniques during the interview, such as suggestion, persuasion, advice, reassurance, interpretation, and giving information. For the number seven, directive versus non-directive interviews. In directive, the interviewer directs, shows the path through advice, suggestion, persuasion, or threat. But in a non-directive interview, it is assumed that the interviewee has the capacity to grow and develop. She must complete freedom to express his or her feelings and emotion. So the interviewer does not try to probe into the past of the clients, make no suggestion. He or she does not try to re-educate or change the client. And lastly is the structured versus unstructured interviews. In the structured, a definite set of questions is predetermined. The interviewer confines himself or herself to pre-decided questions in the interview. In structured, definite questions are asked. In an unstructured interview, there is no such restriction. And for the another techniques of guidance in counseling is the standardized techniques. So what is standardized techniques? There are four types of standardized technique. Number one is aptitude. Number two, achievement, interest, and personality testing. So there is some overlap in these categories, especially in interest and personality. So let's examine these one by one. Aptitude test may be defined as a trait that characterizes an individual's ability to perform in a specific area to acquire the learning necessary for performance in a given area. It presumes an inherent or natural ability that can be developed to its maximum through learning or other experiences. Special aptitude tests refers to those that seek to measure an individual's potential ability to perform or to acquire proficiency in a specific occupation or other type of activity. Also, that measures special aptitude are sometimes referred to a single aptitude test because they only secure a measure for one specific aptitude. So you might have seen or heard about clerical aptitude test and numerical ability test. Different tests done for under special aptitude test for higher educational levels and for the senior high school. We have the vocational aptitude batteries and the scholastic aptitude tests. In vocational aptitude batteries, this multiple aptitude test is typically consists of a series of subtests that relate in varying combination to a series of occupations or occupationally related activities. So commonly used multiple aptitudes, the General Aptitude Test Battery or the GATB. Next is the Differential Aptitude Battery or the DAT, the Flanagan Aptitude Classification Test or the FACT, and the Academic Promise Test or the APT. Scholastic aptitude tests, scholastic or academic aptitude tests measure one's potential for performing in academic situation. So these tests are those that comprise the SAT and the PSAT. Batteries have much merit in so far as predicting academic performance at the higher educational levels. The third standardized technique is the achievement test. We commonly use this in depth ed. So where these tests focus on skills or abilities that are traditional, traditionally taught in the schools. These tools designed to measure the degree of student learning in specific curriculum areas common to most schools such as mathematics and English usages. The achievement test used as learning measure of number one, the amount of learning. Number two, the rate of learning. Number three, the comparison with others or with achievement of self in other areas. Number four, level of learning in sub areas. And number five, strengths and weaknesses in a subject matter area because of their extensive use and relatively easy task of identifying appropriate context measures. The fourth standardized technique is the interest inventory. The interest inventory is a behavior orientation towards certain objects, activities, or experiences. It is an expression of our likes and dislikes or our attractions and aversions. So you might have observed in your class that some students show more inclination in math, while others in computers, some in literary activities, and some are in paintings, and etc. So an individual chooses the most acceptable, suitable alternative out of many go after preferred objectives, activities, and consequently derive satisfaction, success, and happiness out of the activity selected. The last standardized technique is the personality test. Personality is inclusive of everything about one physique, socio-emotional, and personal characteristics. Therefore, personality is the sum total of an individual behavior in social situations. So, what is the purpose of personality testing? Personality is testing is necessary to achieve the following purpose. It helps the student in proper educational and vocational choice. Personality plays an important role in individual, personal, educational, and vocational. Techniques of testing personality. A number of different techniques are used for testing of this. Pwede natin gamitin yung standardized techniques and non-standardized technique under this testing personality. So these are the techniques can be used: interview, self-ratings and personality inventories, rating scales, projective techniques, the autobiography, can be used observation, checklist, situational tests of or behavioral tests, the anecdotal records, and the daily diary. To sum it up, the aim of all guidance is to assist the learners to acquire sufficient understanding of themselves and of their environment to be able to utilize most intelligently the educational opportunities offered by the school and the community. The guidance is the assistance given to individual in making intelligent choices and adjustments in their lives. The ability to make wise choices is not innate. It must be developed. The fundamental purpose of guidance is to develop in each individual up to the limit of his or her capacity the ability to solve in his or her own problems and to make his or her own adjustments. The techniques which are generally employed by guidance workers for collecting basic data about the individual are either standardized or non-standardized. The non-standardized techniques includes interview, ratings, questionnaire, observation sociometry, biography, cumulative record, and anecdotal records. And the standardized techniques are tools for measuring the interest, intelligence, aptitudes, and the personality traits. And thank you so much.